Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast with your host, Kareen Zutleger. Join us as we uncover the hidden thoughts, stories, and moments that help bring light to the healing power of truth and examine how silence can affect us mentally, physically, and spiritually. We'll also share profound stories, interviews, and transformative narratives to help release ourselves from the hidden and step into healing towards inner peace, joy, and fulfillment. Now, here's your healing strategist and host, Kareen.
Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, and her name is Maddy Molle, and I'm going to have Maddy tell you a little bit about herself.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I'm 23. I live in Wisconsin. I am currently aspiring to be a child life specialist, and this is a very special episode today because I am reconnecting with Mrs. Z, who was one of my high school teachers who made a huge impact in my life and through my career and definitely helped set me up for success. So I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, and I am so excited to have you here. This is such a full circle moment
Yeah.
to have us connect, to have us be able to talk about the things that we talked about all
Mm-hmm.
those years ago,
Right.
and to see you on the other side of it is
Yes.
beautiful. And I'm really excited about the fact that you are also aspiring to be a speaker to take this information out more to the public as well.
Mhm.
So if there's somebody out there that's listening that would love to have Maddy come and speak, we'll tell you at the end on how to find her.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
but meanwhile, let's just give the audience a little bit of background information
Mhm.
about your secret and about how keeping that secret, how it affected you.
Yeah. So when I was 15 years old, I was a sophomore in high school. My younger brother, Carson, attempted suicide by firearm. So he was very traumatically injured. It was obviously a really difficult time in our lives. He spent weeks and weeks in the hospital at Children's Hospital in Milwaukee recovering. My parents were with him at the time. So that ended up leaving me and my two other siblings, my brother Josh and my youngest sister Evie, home with our grandmother, who we all adore and love, and she's a wonderful
Mhm.
lady. But unfortunately, the trauma of the incident put her into a headspace of not really being able to take care of us at that time. So I ended up kind of being the one in that situation to be the adult. And there was a lot of growing up that I had to do very quickly at 15, dealing with this immense trauma with complex emotions and not only dealing with that in my own head, but with my siblings as well, and navigating being at school and the community relationships, people asking what's going on. And um, my secret was is that I didn't trust any of the adults in my life at that time. I felt, and once I love my parents and they did what they
Mhm.
had to do in that situation. I don't fault them, but my parents were gone. I was with an adult who could not take care of me and provide me with with what I needed emotionally, the support. So for a long time I didn't tell anybody that I was really struggling because I felt it didn't need to be
Mhm.
heard. There were bigger issues going on. So I don't need to tell anybody. I can do it myself. These adults who don't see it are hurting me, but they don't need to know that. So,
Oh, wow. And that's so powerful because here you are, you're 15 and you're
mhm,
trying to nurture, two
yeah,
younger siblings, along with the fact that you're trying to maintain going to school and having your brother be in the hospital in this
yeah,
critical condition, having really no idea what the future looks like at a
not
time
a
in
clue.
your life when hormonally, first of all, let's go there, that we're off the charts at 15
Oh
years
my
old.
God.
And then we're going to talk brain science here just a second.
Yes.
So at 15, your prefrontal cortex is not online.
No.
Your body is so focused on the hormone changing, so that impulse decision, any of that control that you would have had you been maybe older,
Right.
is it just isn't there
No.
because it's not fully developed yet, and so you're not able to really logic your way into
Mhm.
something.
No.
Everything is then based on emotion, and I can only imagine how emotional it was. Simply, first of all, this is a small community, so it's a very tight knit community. Your dad has a huge presence
We
in the
were,
community.
yes. I mean, like it was, we were, everybody knew who we were. Everybody knew
Hmm.
who the malls were. Everybody knew, I mean, everybody pretty much knew where we lived. So that was also a major part of it, was like, you're not just dealing with this internally. There is an entire community looking at my family, watching this tragedy and trauma unfold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a way that had to be. I mean, I think there's been conversations on this podcast that I've had with other women, and in and around the fact that, from a societal perspective, we as women can feel like, we kind of need to do it all ourselves. And so
Oh,
even
yes.
you at 15 years old were looking, going, well, I just got to deal with this. I got to
Yep.
take care of it myself. I really don't want to burden anybody else. That's what I'm hearing you say, is
Oh,
you
yeah.
didn't want to get other people involved because you felt like, geez, you don't want to be one more burden because there's
Yes.
already all of this going on. And so how did it impact you? Like, like, was it affecting you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually? We kind of cover the gamut on this podcast. So
Yeah, I mean, D, all of the above. It affected every aspect of my life. And it went on for a while. I mean, this is years of
yeah,
trauma and the aftermath of trauma, PTSD. I was
yeah.
anxious. I was depressed. I wasn't sleeping. I was overeating and not exercising, not taking care of myself.
Mm,
I didn't really believe in God at that time or a higher power, because why would they, and I'm putting this in air quotes, do this to me and my
yeah.
family? How is this your plan? I was angry,
Oh,
so angry. Why would this happen? Why would this be your plan? This is horrible. Nobody should have to do this. So it was all consuming.
wow. And I know, having you come into my classroom,
Yeah.
we would kind of work through issues, feelings, probably most
Oh, all the time.
prevalent were the feelings,
All the
the
time.
emotions behind it. And I'm grateful that I was, able to be in that role, and to be there with you, helping you work through that. um, but I know that you've done a ton since that, as far as the healing. So can you just talk us through, what did this healing process look like for you the whole while that Carson is undergoing? So now this has been 8 years. And
Mhm.
I think he's still kind of undergoing some things. And so what did this whole process look like for you, side by
Yeah,
side, walking that journey with
yeah,
him?
it is still ongoing. And I think it always will be. I had such a different experience from my parents and my brother healing. I did not start to heal until much later on, after things returned to what our kind of new normal was. Like, everybody was home, Carson was healing, there were still things going on, but we knew he was going to live. He was fully functioning as the Carson we knew and loved. So nothing
Hmm.
changed with that. I did not start healing until much later, because I had all those emotions that were going on and I wasn't communicating them. I found I had so much anger in myself. And the first
Hmm.
step to my healing process was probably, I mean, well after I graduated high school when I realized like this anger is eating me alive and I have not
Mhm.
talked about it.
How,
So,
how
yeah.
did you know? Like, how did like, I mean, I know like we can physically, feel anger
Yep.
and rage. However, I feel like this kind of anger was more like a little simmering pot, and it wasn't really allowed to boil over
Never.
because that would have not been very ladylike for you to
No, and it
boil
wasn't.
that pot over.
Yes, and I felt like it wouldn't be accepted because, well, why would you be angry in this situation? He lived, your family is together, which of course
Yeah.
I am so incredibly grateful for, but there was
Yes.
still a lot going on. So I felt like that
Yeah.
anger
Yeah.
was not allowed or an appropriate response to the situation. So that anger,
Ooh.
you nailed it. It was a simmering right under the skin thing that would just come up in time in very like inappropriate in my mind times where I feel so angry and it was during my times of anxiety or just
Hmm.
it was just the weirdest thing because I didn't really have anything to be angry about, but my brain and that trauma response took me back to those initial feelings of the anger and resentment towards everyone in my life. So I think I
Sure.
started to recognize it when my relationships were being damaged with the people that I loved because this anger was coming out in different ways. Yeah.
Like, can you give me an example of like maybe what a different way would look like?
So, like, I think it was more, I would get angry about little things. And this is relationships with like my
Mm,
family. So it's like little things that could be like slightly irritating. I would just explode because I had this anger pent up
mm,
in me
mhm.
and it was a big reaction to a small thing. And I was, why am I reacting so aggressively towards this thing that I
Okay.
know isn't that big?
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So the underlying,
Mhm.
because it was still simmering in the
Yes.
pot, it just
Yep.
amplified everything else for
Yes.
you. And then, heaven forbid, you would say, I'm just really mad at all of you,
Yeah.
or here's what's really going on.
Yeah.
Because when we don't necessarily have the words to articulate that emotion, this is
Mhm.
really what I'm feeling and why, it can
Mhm.
come off hurtful. It can be like
Yes.
and then as parents, um I can only say from my own personal
Right.
experience is the journey that we go on with our children. Like, oh my goodness, it's like if I did something as a mom, I was like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, and I'm really sorry. And
Yep.
or I could come off on the defensive too. It's like, I'm doing the best I can, and I got all of this going on, and how can you not understand? I mean, did you
Right.
ever get that kind of pushback at all when you started to step forward?
Oh my gosh. No, my parents were really great. Honestly, the hardest thing for me was saying it and expressing the anger and grief
Mm.
and
Oh.
resentment I had because
Mm.
I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to hurt my parents because I know they love me and
Yeah.
I could not imagine that decision to make being in that situation and I did not want to hurt them and that was part of the reason why I didn't say anything for so long because
Mhm.
I was like they've gone through enough, we've all gone through enough,
Yeah.
why would I put this on them? But there was that, like you said, that mix of there was anger, grief, there was a lot of guilt about these emotions. I felt so
Mm.
guilty about being angry and ashamed that I didn't want to tell anybody because it would hurt them. And I was like, I shouldn't be feeling this. This is wrong, which it wasn't.
Sure.
But yeah.
I just like I feel so much of what you're saying. I feel it
Mhm.
physically in my body,
Yeah.
so I can
Oh my
only
gosh.
imagine how much it physically affected you.
Yep.
But to have, feelings of shame and guilt, and to be, have these like I feel it kind of like that big monkey on your back as
Mhm.
you're carrying all of this stuff down, and it weighs you down because you don't want to disappoint the people that you love the most,
No.
and yet you're just a kid, working to put one foot in front of the other, who's supposed to be having a normal high school experience,
Oh my gosh.
which, it has enough angst in and of itself.
Yes. Yep.
And yet you're over here, kind of nurturing and being a caretaker of others and really looking and seeking some caretaking for yourself,
Yes.
but yet you felt like you couldn't
No,
tell
and
somebody you needed that.
that was the most alone feeling I have ever had.
Oh,
I have never felt more isolated and completely and utterly alone than I had
mm,
in that moment, which was interesting because you see that we had a wonderful reaction from our community of just an outcry of love and support,
yeah.
which is amazing. But
Hmm.
if I'm honest, a lot of it was for my brother, which is fantastic because we all wanted
Sure.
him to heal and we wanted him to know we loved him and that he mattered and we care. But a lot of it was for my brother and for my parents, which I understand. But I was like, hi, like we're over here, we're part of this family, we're hurting too. Please, someone
Yeah.
notice that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man, I feel that. And I could see it,
Hmm.
right? You could see it because it's like, here you are, you other three kids are, yeah, your basic needs are being provided for,
Right.
right? But you don't have your mom and dad. And so I think it's such a wonderful example for you to be able to speak on this topic, to be able to educate
Hmm.
people in the community to say, when something like this happens, maybe we could look bigger, right?
Yes.
It's great that everybody rallied around your mom and dad and Carson, and it's
Right.
it's fantastic because we want that.
Yes.
And, but let's not forget about all the other people that are
Mhm.
affected. I have a friend that once told me, like if somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, people bring a casserole and,
Yeah.
right, people show up and this kind of stuff. In this situation, right, they're bringing the casserole, but what you needed was so much deeper than that. What you
Oh my
needed was
gosh.
somebody to sit and listen and kind of
Mhm.
tend to your personal needs. And, we often forget um, that component of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not everybody is comfortable maybe holding somebody else's hand and saying, like, I can be there for you. But then there's Fred Rogers, from Mr. Rogers, that would always say, look for the helpers. The helpers are there, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yep.
there. You just got to look for them. And in your case, you were doing the best you could. Grandma was doing the best she could. Mom and dad,
Yes.
everybody was
Yep.
rallied around. And um, in all of that, right? Like, you had said you didn't really at that point in time in your life didn't necessarily believe in God.
Mhm.
Where are you at that right now, if you don't mind me
Yeah.
asking?
I do believe in God. I believe it's really funny because it sounds very cliche to me that this happened for a reason. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I have
Mm,
seen it in action in the path that it has set me on and my brother and my parents, and
mm,
I have seen it work. Um, so there was a lot of reconciling with that because
sure.
after the healing process started and the fog of the anger kind of began to clear, I was like, okay, this is actually where I'm at. This has provided, even though it was tragic, provided some amazing opportunities for growth and love and healing. So I'm profoundly grateful for that. Um,
Mm,
I mean, it ultimately set me on my life's passion and goal for a career, which is as a child life specialist, working with families that are in the situation I was in. So, yeah,
yeah. To see the gift is truly wisdom. And for
yes,
somebody to be 23 and that level of wisdom just speaks to, to what kind of person you are, because you can see the enormity
Mhm.
in what happened and what you can take from it. Not everybody can see the gift in it.
Yeah.
um, and often, right, because when you were saying earlier, you were saying, well, why would God do this, in air
Mhm.
quotes, to your family? Right, everything is subjective. It's free will, and it's not
Right.
necessarily done by God, right?
Right.
And and our thoughts are so powerful. So like, you thinking, that, just that you couldn't tell anybody, that you couldn't share with anybody, how you were truly feeling inside, those thoughts can then they run away, and they're like,
Mhm.
they run amok.
Right.
And then you have spent time working through them, processing them. um like, what did that involve for you? Did you go to therapy? Did you seek, other counseling? What did that look like?
Therapy to start, it was a neutral place for me to express my emotions to someone who was not connected to the other people in
Mm,
my life, which was so huge for me because this is a person who's honestly just listening to me and what I'm saying about it. And I can
mhm.
say whatever I want about it because they don't know, they're not going to go tell my mom or dad or whatever, So, like,
Yeah, right.
therapy was a big part of it. And within the therapy, we got in pretty deep to the, trauma, how it affects the brain, how it affects your thinking, and having to rewire those systems and
Yeah,
retrain your brain not to respond to stimulus that you think is your trauma, but it's not. So that was
yeah.
part of it. The other hand was, it was telling my truth, which was,
Mm,
I started telling my truth to my therapist because, like I said, that was a safe space for me to share.
sure.
And then ultimately, I built up the confidence to share my truth with the people in my life who I was like, you hurt me, or this is what was going on in this time, and this is still the feelings I have about it. And I was able to share that, which was a relief I can't explain. Can't explain.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure too that some, some of that, just the talk therapy in and of
Mhm.
itself, helped you regulate parts of your body.
Yes.
Because when you have a traumatic moment like that, the evening that the event took place, and then you start to relive it over and over, because every time somebody asks you what happened,
Mhm.
then it sends your body back into that fight or flight response. And the next thing you know, you're in that perpetual state, because you have, and people mean well and they want to know what's going on, but that just ingrains it in you. And so then you
Right.
had to kind of undo all of that as well. You did
Yes.
the thought processes along with the nervous system components to it.
Mhm. Oh my God.
So therapy has been good.
Yes.
And what
Yeah.
else?
It's
What else
honest.
did you do?
The biggest one for me was, and I say it, speaking my truth and holding my ground on speaking my truth, because for so long I would be like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And then I'd get scared because I was ashamed, I was guilty, I didn't want to hurt
Mhm.
anybody's feelings. So I'd back off and be like, okay, well, we're just
Sure.
gonna just gonna go, we'll figure it out. It's fine. I'm not gonna talk about it and it'll be okay. But
Mm,
eventually standing in my truth, allowing that to kind of wash over me, like, these are the emotions I'm feeling, this anger that I'm feeling, that is okay. And that
yeah.
was a big one as well, as not just like, okay, I need to get rid of this and I need to figure out how to be done with this emotion. It was like allowing that to sit, accepting it, acknowledging it, and like, that's okay. That was big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. There's Gabby Bernstein talks about this, right? There's no bad parts.
Right.
There's no bad parts of us. Things happen,
Mhm.
and how we respond or react in the moment, we get to be the ones to work through that, and then allow it and feeling it, because I know as a female, so female to female speaking to you, is that if I in air quotes overreact,
Yep.
you can be seen as crazy, like she's
Mhm.
crazy,
Mhm.
which is a term I do not like,
Nope.
when somebody is having an emotional moment, and or you can be perceived bitchy, or just a lot of different ways
Mean
because you
or
are,
right,
yeah.
cold even. That was another one.
Hmm.
Like I was terrified of being this like cold, bitter woman who just I don't like you and you do I like that was
Mm,
terrifying for me. And
yeah.
so I wasn't allowed to feel those emotions. Yeah.
Right. And it's something too, right? Because that's we, kind of the stories we tell ourselves is that it's not safe. It's not safe for me to express this.
Yes.
And yet we do need to. We need to
Mhm.
process it. We don't need to sit in it and swim in it and so, get comfortable and wallow around in it. But we do get to express it. And I'm so proud of you for taking those steps to heal, and for creating the boundaries that you needed to. And being brave enough, having that courage to say to mom and dad, hey, this is really what I was feeling and going through. And like we said, it's not about the intentionality of it, right? Your parents never were there's not a malice bone in their bodies, right? So
No,
it's like,
not at all.
they're loving and genuine and kind, and they're
Yes.
just good human beings. And even with the best of intentions, things can go sideways.
Of course.
And I think that that's where forgiveness gets to come in as
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
right? Because when we can look to the others and to see the human in anybody that was involved in all of this, and say, you know what? Not only do I forgive all of them, I forgive me first and foremost.
And that was one of the biggest, that was the other, I'm kind of like part three of the healing process that's also ongoing. It's like, okay, I acknowledged my emotions. I finally let them out. Okay, now I told the people I'm angry. How am I feeling about it now? And like, where am I at with forgiveness? And how are these emotions affecting my interactions with my parents? And more particularly, like, it was really hard for me to get back into a relationship with my grandmother, who was the one who was, in charge of us
Mm,
while everything was going on, because I was most angry about that neglect. Because I was
mm,
like, in my, like you said, 15-year-old brain that doesn't have a lot of logic or reasoning. Okay, my parents
yeah.
have a good reason to be kind of absent from us right now. You do not. So
Mm,
ultimately coming through all of that, and the forgiveness piece was huge, because at first it was, I'm not even going to acknowledge that you hurt me. And then, okay, you hurt me. How do I move on from there and forgive you? Because, like you said, the intention never was to hurt from anybody in that
mm,
situation. It never was.
no.
I never once questioned the love my family had for me. I never once questioned. It was, I mean, it's unconditional. And I knew that the whole way through. It wasn't about the intentions, it was about the hurt and remembering it wasn't intentional.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and the circumstances, right? It was the circumstances you were
Yeah.
angry with, right? And
It-
when we can separate too, right? That being from the behavior, and it's like,
Mhm.
like this happened,
Yep.
but it's the circumstances that I'm really angry about, and
Right.
you were allowed to. I would say maybe allowed finally to let the pot boil over and just let it
Yes.
out.
Yep. For sure.
Um, and and it's great, and I love to see you moving forward in your life, and becoming um a child life specialist. Can you just talk a little bit, because I 100% know that the majority of the listeners probably have
Yeah.
no idea what that is.
Yeah, so child life specialist, kind of a broad term. They work in the medical field with children and families, and it's a range of different things, helping them cope with potentially like the trauma and stress of like intense hospitalization like we experienced, or traumatic hospitalization like we experienced,
Mm,
to, a child going through chemotherapy or even a broken
okay.
leg. You're working in the medical setting, trying to lessen the trauma that happens to children and
Okay.
their families
Yeah.
in that setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, and so like if somebody would need a child life specialist or believe that they need one, how would they go about having one of those? Is that just something that only certain hospitals have? Or like do they all or how do
I
they
mean, it definitely
find
depends
them?
on the hospital's like program and how set up they are for child life. Child life is definitely a relatively new field and concept that's kind of just starting to be recognized as very important for the emotional and mental well-being of patients and families. Honestly, I would just be like, if you are in the situation
Mm,
where you think this person might be a good resource, be like, do you have a child life department?
yeah.
Can we see them? Can they come see us? That is one of the biggest, I think, just ask and see what the hospital setup is. So, yeah.
And how beautiful for you to be able to come around to being a child life specialist and having a desire to lessen the trauma for,
Yep.
for other families.
Yes,
And so there's the good, right? The good that came,
it is. It's the
the
good.
gift in it. And I also see your family advocating fiercely out there for prevention and for mental wellness.
Mhm.
It's a journey, and a lot of right for everything that I do is all based around thought processes and really understanding, how do we get in those places where it gets so where it could potentially get dark?
Right,
And you're out there, working as a family to educate people on what that could potentially look like based on what your family has survived and
right.
thrived
Yes.
from
And
now.
that's like you said, that's the gift that is on the other side of things, that I couldn't see at 15 in the darkness of it all was I found a passion that I found a job that I'm just so excited about and I put my heart
Hmm.
and soul into it every day. My family, my parents and my brother have spoken in our community and out in the world about their experience,
Hmm.
and I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said to them, like, you saved my life, or like, you helped
Hmm.
me talk to my child about this, which ended up like
Hmm.
saving their life. And that is mind blowing. That is
Hmm.
even just one person
Yeah,
saying that like to my family and you saved my life. Wow, that's the gift.
right. That's why I have this podcast.
Yeah.
It's all about the ripple.
Hmm.
It's all about one person hearing somebody else's journey and saying, you know what? Wow, like they overcame that. I can too, or my family can too.
Right.
And I just want to thank you for, coming on and sharing your, where you are and sharing your truth, right? That I mean, it's okay to be angry,
Yep.
right? We just want to stay angry forever, but it's
No,
okay
and
to
that
be
was,
angry.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited I got to do this and be here and share with you because you were in the middle of it with me.
Mhm.
I mean, you were in the worst of it with me and seeing the worst of it. And I'm so glad, like you said, full circle, get to see me on the other side of it,
Mhm.
thriving and doing
Uh,
being in a place that I never thought I would be. So it's awesome.
oh, and I'm so proud of you. I just can't. I mean, it makes me a little emotional here.
I know.
Because I'm so proud of you. It is really it is so beautiful to witness. I do love it when I get to hear from former students because um it just is you don't know the impact that you have on people right away. But to know that I somehow contributed just a sliver into your life, um, that just that brings me joy is what it does, and it makes me want to continue to bring this sort of information out to the public because by you speaking up, by you having the courage, by your family having the courage, there's a cycle there that gets
Mhm.
broken.
Yeah.
right? Because, those unspoken things, those unspoken expectations that we have, whether it be on our children or as a male or as a female or, whatever, um, when we can essentially shatter those norms
Yep.
by speaking out and speaking up, um, that sets other people free.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, out of this whole experience, you obviously have gained some wisdom, lots and lots of
Yep.
wisdom. So, please share with our audience just like one golden nugget that you carry close to you, and that you would like to have them carry close to them.
Your story matters.
Yeah.
Your story matters. And I don't care if it steps on other people's toes, if you're worried about other people's reactions, your story matters.
Oh, it's a speak it up, right? Speak up,
Yes,
speak out, speak
talk
your
about it.
truth.
Yep, say it
Hmm.
and stay grounded in your truth. It's so, so scary. I know, but stay there, acknowledge your truth, and tell your story.
Yeah, and get help, right? Like
Yes.
get help, right? There should be no stigma in
Yeah.
seeking help. And I think is really important too. Well, I
Yeah.
really want to thank you for being here today. If the audience would like to have you come and speak, have you on their podcast,
Yeah.
how would somebody go about connecting with you, Maddie?
Yeah, I am on social media. You can contact me on Instagram. My handle is Mads, Mads dot Grace, Grace. And you'll see me on there as Maddy Molle. So shoot me a message. Or
Message.
if you ever just
Beautiful.
want to, I also want to put it out if you need someone neutral to share your story with, like I said, how important it was for me to share, send me a message. Just somebody to share it with, somebody to tell it
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks
Thank
again
you.
for being here. We sure do appreciate you sharing your wisdom, here on The Secret Keepers.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Secret Keepers podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a like and follow so we can invite you back. And if you just want more, visit CorrineZuleger.com. Remember, you're not alone.